process.
Right.
So, you know, it's better to lean the process, as we say, so that it's an efficient process that you're automating.
Right. And so things like, you know, do you really need that extra step?
Correct.
Or if we did it this way, could we reduce redundancy? Or if we did this, could we reduce error, which also increases efficiency? So like the paper example, it's like, yeah, okay, it may say, you know, this is a high importance, someone could write an asterisk on the top or whatever, this is high importance, but to have the visual cue of, oh, that one is, you know, a high priority one because it's on a different color paper, something that grabs your attention.
And we do a lot with visual cues also. There's something called a Kanban board, which you know, you put up literally a whiteboard or a bulletin board, and you post notes to it, things that every morning when someone comes in, they can look and know exactly what's high priority for the day.
Right. Yeah, especially, and that's especially important when you have multiple team members that need to touch a project or multiple teams that need to touch a project, because then you know exactly who was involved at what step. Most of these are digital now. It's not necessarily a physical whiteboard anymore, but it's, you know, some sort of digital you know, representation of a whiteboard or a sticky note system of here's this person did this, and then moves on to the next piece of the task.
Put the dots up on the floor.
Put the dots, yeah.
Put the dots. Here's 5
Well,
dots.
you can kind of think about it like building a car, right? You start with a frame. Someone's got to add the, you know, the body panel. Someone else is doing the engine. Someone else is doing the electrical work. Someone's got to put windows on it at some point. You know, so the last person's putting the wheels on and rolling it off the assembly line.
And you shouldn't be planning the who you're selling it to when it's first being assembled.
Right.
The goal should be to produce the car with as few errors as possible. Quality car, right?
Right.
Worry about that second half of the process after it's shipped. But one of the things we're doing here in Vermont that is fairly unique, lots of states, and we work with a lot of states in New England. We have a group of lean practitioners in the Northeast, and we're the only ones that are combining results-based accountability and lean within the same program. There are some states that are using RBA, results-based accountability, for certain things or a certain agency or division, and then they're also using lean, but they're not doing it together. And that's one of the key things that I think we've brought to this. And let me explain what the difference is. As Ben said, lean is about processes, okay? It's task-oriented. How can you reduce downtime, redundancies, duplication of effort? This is a good one for the state. 17 signatures on one thing, you know, one request, things like that. You're shaking your head.
At the most, any document should have 3 signatures on it.
You know, so those kinds of things. But if you, results-based accountability is really about improving the results of a program or a process. So if you have a training program and your goal is to fill the class, have the people graduate from the class, and then get as many of those people into a new job as possible. If you have a really bad registration system, you can fix that with lean. You can go through the registration system and figure out why you aren't filling your classes, and, you know, or if people are leaving before they finish, are you off the public transportation route? You know, is it somewhere people can't get to? So you can improve those things, but that will not improve the quality of the program. The quality of the program has to be based on, do you have people that are certified to teach whatever you're teaching? And do you have a process in place to help these people get a job? And are you tracking that? So you can't lean your way to true better results, and you can't results-based accountability your way to an efficient process. So we've combined them both so that we touch both the outcome at the end. Are we graduating a sufficient percentage of people from our class? And of those people, how many are getting a job? That's the goal of the program. But you can still make process improvements within the program.
And that's why lean is so perfect for manufacturing, because every step of the way you could analyze it and make improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also, when we're talking about services that are being provided, right? Because lean typically applies to manufacturing
Right.
or
Right.
something. But when we're talking about services, I think what's cool about this is the situation you're talking about is that, from a government standpoint, we want to make sure that our tax dollars are being spent well, right? And this hits both pieces of that,
Yes, it
right?
does.
Because we want to make sure the program itself is actually doing what it's supposed to do, right? Which is the results-based accountability piece of it. Are we actually, for the X number of dollars we're spending on this training program, is it actually producing people that can take a job?
Right.
And is it actually giving them a better job than they would have had otherwise?
That's correct.
And that's the question that RBA answers, but the question that Lean answers or addresses is that, are we doing this in an efficient way?
Right.
Is there are we using taxpayer dollars in an efficient way to deliver those services, even if the outcome of those services is still a net positive? Is there a way to increase that efficiency?
And some people, when they hear results-based accountability or lean, they think that it's a code word for cut, and it's not. The first purpose of any of these, continuous improvement protocols, is to improve the results, improve the outcome, build capacity in the program. I can go ad nauseum about incidents in state government where, historically we have had layoffs, or the legislature adds more responsibility to a particular department or program, and you get a backlog. And so the typical answer, the historic answer, is always, I need another person. Well,
and more money.
And more money and another person. So, the idea is, can you relieve the existing employees of the burden of inefficient processes?
Right.
If they're doing duplicative work, and it could be a system. It could be simply something as simple as creating a database in Excel to help them.
Right.
We just had a very simple project where one of my folks went and worked with someone who has this massive Excel spreadsheet that they have to do every month. Took it from, 12, 15 hours of work a month down to 2 hours, just by making the Excel spreadsheet, using some tools within Excel that the owner of the spreadsheet didn't know how to do. So just helping maximize the effort. It doesn't necessarily, mean cutting. It's not supposed to mean cutting. It's supposed to mean making things operate as best as you can.
Susan, could we just, before we get into some of the other questions, could you talk about how this position, because it's a standalone position, how it came into existence, and what prompted it? How did it come to be?
In 2014, the legislature, actually back in the 90s, we'll go back there, Con Hogan brought RBA, results-based accountability, into the Agency of Human Services when he was secretary. RBA was developed by the Maryland chief budget officer for the state of Maryland, who just thought there has to be a better way to analyze what we do and how we spend our money, determine if we're spending taxpayers' money efficiently, but also are we getting the results that we want. So he came up with this methodology, and it was actually a lot of work on former Senator Snelling's part to sell this to the legislature, and the legislature adopted. They didn't name it RBA, but you can read it. And so in answer to that, the Shumlin administration created this position of Chief Performance Officer. And I was, at the time, in my 8th year of being Deputy Commissioner of Finance, who was the one that always got these things to do. And so it's kind of natural that I would take that job.
That almost could be the perfect job for this job, because in your work, you know everything about each agency.
Right. So it was in direct response, or at least in preparation of the legislature passing this, and there were 2 reports a year required, and trying to develop a system where we would report on programmatic performance measures. When the Scott administration was coming into, and when he'd won the election and was coming into transition, I let them know, because I knew many of them from
Right, sure.
the Douglas administration, and I let them know what I had been doing, and they were really excited about it. And if you go back and read the governor's economic proposal that he had done as part of the campaign, he highlights lean. And so I explained to them that it can't just be lean, it has to be RBA, because that's in statute. And so we need to construct something to do both, and not have two separate sets of, which
Right,
that's typical too, you know, in state
Right,
government. You have
yeah.
this set A, set
And
B, and
neither
you're,
one talks to each other.
right, nobody talks to each other, and we use 427 different performance measures when
Right.
you should be using the same measures. And so, you know, that's my mandate from the Scott administration, is to train the employees. I have some goals of getting 25% of all the employees trained by 2021, and to build a process by which lean projects can be vetted and help assist a department, and build a culture of continuous improvement. That's my biggest challenge.
Right.
That's
always
slow
You must
going.
get-
but-
cultural change is
Cultural
always the
change is
hardest.
very
You
hard,
must get
yeah.
resistance. You must get resistance.
Oh, of course,
you know,
of course. Yeah.
Because, but the governor the other day in a speech said RBA.
Oh, yeah.
I heard him say it. I went, whoa. Because
Yep.
he is very supportive.
And he
at least
talks
in
lean a
concept.
lot.
Yeah.
And the governor and Jason Gibbs, the chief of staff, are constantly, you know, working with the cabinet. So we've got a lot of buy-in at the cabinet level, and with our training, we're coming in from the bottom, and we're training employees who get
Right.
very excited about this. So where, you know, the resistance lies is that supervisors and managers who are really responsible for the bulk of the work that state government does, convincing them that to take the time to do this is worth it,
Right.
because it will help them in the end. They're usually under-resourced, not enough money, not enough people, so the reaction is, I don't have time for this. And so, you know, my job and my department's job is to convince them that you don't not have time for this. You have to make time for this, because the legislature no more, you know, the appropriation committee, they don't want to hear, I need more people and I need
Right.
more money. They want to hear, well, if we give you more people and more money, what are you going to do with it? How is that going to increase productivity, increase the results, get more people jobs?
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. You really, the last couple of years, have started hearing the finance committees talk about this.
Yes.
And you know, a lot of that is, you know, credit to you, but it is something that they're looking at. They're not writing checks.
No, they're not.
And if they are going to write a check, they're going to ask, you know, what is this going to gain us down the road?
Right.
And those are absolutely the questions they should be asking.
That is.
And I think one of the resistance points potentially is that, you know, people hear RBA and they're like, oh, this is going to be a cost-cutting thing,
Right.
like you
Exactly.
mentioned. But the metrics really depend on the program, right?
right.
What are the goals of the program? You know, if it's a healthcare program, like you know, something where they're trying to increase primary care visits, or the goal may be saving money, right? Along both state money and taxpayer money when they're, you know, when they're paying premiums, right? So that may be the goal of a program like that. But a program like food stamps, right? The goal is not about saving money. The goal is moving people out of food insecurity, right? So that's the measure you're measuring against, is, you know, how many people have we moved out of food insecurity, and you know, what can we do to improve those outcomes, and what can we do to make that process more efficient?
So one of the things that we're working on right now, we're working with one of the Agency of Human Services regional offices on how they do their intake process, and we're piloting it with them, and figure out if we can figure out how to make that whole intake process more efficient. The agency will start to roll it out in the different district offices. Also, some of the other things we do with folks is we help them do planning, whether it's strategic planning or simply like the new State Workforce Development Board. We've helped them build their charter You know, what are they trying to do?
Nice.
But getting back to continuous improvement, all of these methods, systems, tools, and technology, it's really the plan, do, study, adjust cycle. You know, it's don't run to the conclusion, don't run to the solution before you've sat down and said, what is the problem? What are the root causes? What can we do? What would we like to do? You know, pie in the sky, but what can we reasonably do so that you have a path and benchmarks to measure yourself against that you're actually going to be able to accomplish.
I always thought it would be good to, when somebody leaves a position, for management to sit and talk about that position.